Hello and welcome back to Premier Injuries. Today you're going to see a new person next to me. It's not Big Ben, it's Tristan himself. We welcome him back to the channel. Today we're talking all about the Three Lions, our reaction to the squad announcement, what to expect from them, and look, he's sporting the shirt as well, how they might perform at Euro 2021. You know the question that we're going to end with as well. Is it going to be coming home? But yeah, once again, we're lucky enough to be joined by you, Tristan. Remember to follow your Twitter handle at Tristan T Coach. Everybody kind of tuning in, and remember to subscribe to our channel as well. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of Tristan through this summer and also next season as well. But yeah, welcome back, Tristan. How have you been since we last talked?
Thanks, Jason. I've been very, very good. Thanks. I'm back in the UK now, but then potentially going on my next sort of European adventure quite shortly. But yeah, I've been enjoying the sun over the last few days in the UK and also over in Portugal, which is why I'm sporting this lovely tan. I sort of look like the same colour as the England shirt, but yeah, never mind. And peeling a bit on the back of my neck, but yeah, I've been enjoying the start of the summer finally. How about you?
Yeah, I've been good. I'm really excited for this tournament. I'm happy that it's not cancelled. You know, that was one of the things with COVID, with everything last year. I think genuinely this could be something great for across the continent, just something that everybody can look forward to. But yeah, you've mentioned there, you've got a change of scenery. You've been on a scouting trip to Porto. You actually went to see the Champions League final. I mean, it's been pretty positive for you at the moment, and then we're moving into the summer. But one of the final questions before we get into the analysis, I do want to ask, how will you be watching the tournament? You mentioned there that you might be going off to a job. Will you be watching at home, or will you be watching with your new job? I mean, will you even try to get to any of the matches?
Yeah, no, obviously I'll try and catch as many as possible. Not as many as I have in previous tournaments. You know, I'm normally that guy who sits down and watches absolutely everything I can. You know, and that's as a football fan and someone who lives and breathes the game, and their job and life is football. It doesn't get much better than the summer football tournaments, does it? And you know, really, really looking forward to watching the England games in particular. Like I said, hopefully in my new role, I'll be able to catch as many as possible. Most of the games are in the evening, so I don't think it should be too much of a problem. It's not like the World Cups out in Brazil, etc., Japan, South Korea, where there's the times all in different, the time zone's completely different. So yes, I'll be trying to catch as many of the games as possible, even though there's also more teams now. There's 24 teams, right? So there's a few kind of games against maybe not the most glamorous teams, but you know, I'll still be trying to tune in as much as possible.
Yeah, I think I like that there's teams like North Macedonia in the tournament, but then the question is, realistically, how far are they going to go? But sometimes it's the turning up for these nations that count. Just a final question, actually. Which England shirt is it that you're sporting for today's chat? Do you know, like, the era that it's from, or have I given you a bit of a curveball there?
Yeah, it's a hell of a curveball, but I'm almost certain it's 1982.
Ah,
I think it's 82, not 86. The one I always kind of wore, I had the 91 with, you see a lot of people wearing them with 19, which I think was Gazza's number on the back, which is, to be fair, my favourite one. I prefer that one to this one. This one's 82. I think that's the tournament where Robson scored that early goal against France in the first game. But I'm sure there'll be people that are older than me that can maybe correct us in the comments. But yeah, I think that's the year.
no, it's exciting. I love a good kind of retro football shirt. That's what it's all about. But yeah, the squad has been announced. I think there's genuine positivity around the team at the moment. So let's analyse the announcement, which players are in there, you know, going from the three goalkeepers down. First question to you is, do you think that Southgate has got the selections right?
So honestly, like he has got a bit of stick over the last few days, and there's always controversy, right? When we talk about England squads in this time of year. I think having 26 players as well has helped him slightly. And maybe I'm biased because I'm a big Southgate fan, but I think he's got it absolutely spot on. the going from 23 to 26 in the squad has massively helped him. You know, there's those other 3 spots are very difficult to get rid of. And the other thing that I think has fallen into his hands is the Mason Greenwood situation. Him being injured has kind of forced Gareth Southgate's hand in either, you know, including him and maybe leaving out Lewin, Sancho, someone like that. So yeah, I think, to be honest, if I was Gareth Southgate, I would have picked exactly the same squad. And it's difficult to say now. There's a couple of players like Tyrone Mings, for example. I don't think he's at the level of the other players in the squad. I don't think this season particularly he's performed that well, to be honest. I'm more of a fan of Ben White, but really we're talking about 5th and 6th choice centre backs here. You know, it's not really the end of the world. I'm happy that Eric Dyer is not in the squad, to be quite honest. That you know, in the past we've had players like Dyer and Livermore and things like that, and it just shows the strength that we have now in the squad. That all these players are top players, either approaching world class, a lot of them very good Premier League players, or players like Mount who have the potential to be world class. So yeah, he's picked a very good squad. The right back situation, he's had a lot of stick for, but for me, I think he'll play 3 at the back. And James has put in some tremendous performances at right centre back in for Chelsea this season. And also, as Southgate alluded to in his press conference yesterday, against Villa in the second half, he played half an hour in midfield, like holding midfield, and Reece James was excellent in there as well. And that's obviously a position that England aren't so strong in at the moment, with Henderson coming back from injury. Phillips has got a little injury, and then really you're only looking at Rice in there, to be honest, because Mount prefers to play a bit higher. So you've got those two, and then obviously Walker can play right centre back, and then Alexander-Arnold can play right wing back or right back in a 4. Trippier has played on the left before for England, so he's picked a squad of very, very good footballers, and yeah, no real complaints from me, to be quite honest.
Would you say that there's a little bit lacking in the midfield, though? The absence of James Ward-Prowse is one that, you know, I've kind of indicated there, because we remember the 2018 World Cup, 9 of the 12 goals came from dead ball situations, and he is the dead ball specialist, maybe one of the best in the Premier League. Do you think that maybe that was one that missed out unfairly, or are you totally happy that there's enough coverage from other players on the kind of set piece situations?
For me, Ward-Prowse is best as a number 8 in a 4-3-3. And like I said, we might play 4-3-3, but I think more likely is 3-4-3. So I'm not sure how well Ward-Prowse fits into that too. Probably more than Mount, to be honest, but I'm not sure how well he does. And also potentially 4-2-3-1. So if we do play at 4 at the back, I think we'll see Southgate putting on attacking fullbacks and then giving us a bit more security in the midfield, and putting 2 more defensive-minded midfielders in. Deliveries, set pieces, obviously Ward-Prowse is fantastic, and it can be important during the Euros and tournaments to have that kind of quality. But come on, Trippier scored that free kick against Croatia, so he kind of deserves to be on any free kicks England never have from now on. And Chilwell, very good corner taker from both sides, and there's multiple other players in there that can take good deliveries either from corners or direct free kicks. So yeah, it's a factor, but I think leaving Ward-Prowse out, to be honest, is probably the best shout.
So let's look at the team then, who you think will be starting, knowing the way that Southgate likes to manage. What is the 11 that you envision it to be? Or do you think it's even incorrect to kind of say that, because it could change game to game? As you said, there could be a 3-4-3, could be a 4-3-3. Yeah, let's talk about what you think Southgate's almost best 11 will be.
Yeah, so obviously the first friendly is only in a few hours' time, and I might go out massively on a limb and say it's going to be 3-4-3, and then it's 4 something. And obviously the formation in the friendlies might be completely different to even in the tournament, with the different players coming back from the Champions League final, etc., etc. But I think it will be 3-4-3. I think the goalkeeper will be Pickford because of his ability with his feet. I think Southgate prefers that. Henderson, good goalkeeper, but made some mistakes in recent games when he got on for Man United, and probably not as good in terms of distribution as Pickford, and obviously doesn't have that England experience that Pickford obviously does have. So I think he'll go 3 at the back. Ironically, if Maguire's fit, it's the same 3 at the back that played in the Euros. The World Cup 2018, 3 years ago now. So Walker, right centre back, and then John Stones and Harry Maguire. I think that's his best back three. What he sees is his best back three. If Maguire's not fit, Mings potentially will slot in on the left centre back slot. Or maybe if Maguire's not fit, he'll think I don't have many good centre backs, and he'll go for maybe a back four. I'll probably jump in with what I would prefer now as well. Walker's a fantastic, good, very, very good player. Maybe for me, Reece James would go in ahead of him actually in that right centre back role, purely because I think Walker is very prone to defensive errors inside his own box. We've seen that in a few games. We saw it against, I think it was Denmark. It was one of the games in the autumn where Walker went back. I think it was actually centre back in a 2, but made a couple of mistakes in there. Not so reliable defensive 1v1. I think James just tips him in that respect, to be honest. Although, no complaints to to see Walker in there. Then the kind of the wing backs, I think he'll go for Trippier on the right side over Alexander-Arnold, James, or over Alexander-Arnold or James. I think Trippier, he really likes him. Listen to Southgate speak. He always rates him, quite highly in interviews and stuff, and has played him in the past, even though he picked him for the last squad, even though he'd been out with a gambling ban for a few months. So, I think he'll play Trippier. Personally, I'd go for Alexander-Arnold in that role, putting deliveries in for Harry Kane at the back post. I mean, I think that's how England are going to score goals, to be quite honest. It's a tried and tested formula for England, but then obviously more so for Liverpool with Alexander-Arnold on the right, or even for Spurs with their right wing backs getting high and putting balls in for Harry Kane. So, I think he'll go for Trippier. I would say Trent. In midfield, the centre of midfield, the two players in there. Rice, I think it is almost certain to be in there. And then there's obviously the question with Jordan Henderson, whether he's going to be fit. I mean, even if he is fit, or he can't be fully match fit because he's not played for most of the season, for a few months now. But even if he's 90% fit, I still think it's a bit of a gamble with the fact he's not played. And when he did play this season, as we spoke about a few months ago, it was at centre back for a lot of the time. So he's well out of practice. Yes, he's a great leader, great character, good experience. The most experienced player in the squad alongside Kane, probably even more experienced actually. So, maybe we'll go Henderson. I'd like to see Phillips as well, given a chance, especially in the friendlies, see how he does against maybe the weaker opponents like Scotland, to see how he does. But my biggest preference would be Rice next to Mount. They're best mates, but obviously as well, tactically, I think with 3 at the back, we've got that security. Rice gives a bit of security as well. He can win the ball back, cover a lot of ground, and then Mason Mount can be that guy getting the ball and playing those forward passes in between the lines, and then also like he did on Saturday in the Champions League final to Kai Havertz, play that ball in behind as well, that important pass. But to be honest, we don't really have from midfield. A lot of the time, I've seen our midfielders, plays a lot of diagonals or a lot of sideways passes, but we've been crying out for players that can play that through ball. And Mason Mount, he can do that, get on the ball. But again, I think for Southgate, maybe it's a bit too attacking, a bit too open if we have an attack-minded player like Mason Mount in that centre midfield spot. And then left wing back, I think he'll go for Luke Shaw. Again, nice and secure, good defensive option, but he's good going forward also. And he's really added that, or brought that back to his game this season, when he obviously showed that years ago for Southampton. Shaw, I'd be happy with. I think Chilwell could do an equally good job. I think against the weaker teams in particular, Chilwell's probably almost certainly the better going forward, can even get in the box and get chances for himself. Good on set pieces, like I said. So, Ben Chilwell would be a shout for me as well, to be honest, maybe even slightly over Shaw on the attacking aspect. And then front 3, I think, obviously the 9 is going to be the man Harry Kane, if he can be fit and if he can be ready. And even if he's not fit, and even if he's got one leg missing, I think Southgate will just throw him in anyway, because he's Mr. England, isn't he? And he's one of the best number 9s in the world, and 100% will be the guy leading the line for the 3 lines. And then either side of him, I think he'll go for the 2 Manchester City players. I think he'll go for Sterling and Foden. He likes Sterling. I think even though Sterling's not had a great season, didn't have a good Champions League final when he was surprisingly picked by Pep. I think Foden is just a top class player. Maybe it's an easy shout for Southgate if he leaves him out because he's not as experienced as like Rashford, for example. Even though Rashford's only like 21, 22. Maybe he's a bit more of a risk. Probably not as good off the ball as some other options we could have up there. But yeah, Sterling, Kane, and Foden is what I think. If he goes for that system, he might go for, or in a 4-3-3, he might go for. Personally, I'd probably prefer Grealish over Sterling there, even though Grealish had a bit of an injury problem, and then came back and didn't really hit the heights that he did around Christmas time and just before. Yes, so Grealish over Sterling or Sancho as well. I think Sancho, almost like Trippier, gets overlooked often because obviously he's playing in a different country in a poorer league, but he's a top talent. He's a fantastic talent. So I think on that right side, if you have maybe a bit more security in Trippier or Reece James instead of Trent Arnold, and then you have Sancho out on that wing, that right side, then that could be one hell of a front three, and yeah, that's the kind of 11.
Yeah, I think one of the problems for Southgate is that front three. Who does he go with? Which kind of style does he want to play? Just quickly back to some of the talking points that you said there. Do you believe that criticism of Pickford is too harsh?
Not sure. It depends. It's like if so players overrated, underrated. People have different perceptions of. I don't know. Maybe I've not seen lots of people that are really critical towards him. I think he as a goalkeeper, he makes mistakes 100%. He's got mistakes in him. Positioning sometimes, or a lot of the time, the fact that he's not as tall means that he's not as an imposing figure in goal in 1v1s, for example. But I think with his distribution, he's not perfect. He's not Ederson or Alisson or Ter Stegen or one of these top European keepers, but he's the best of what we've got. And if Southgate wants to stick to the kind of England DNA that he's helped to build, then I think that's the pick. To be honest, I don't think Pickford's that bad with his goalkeeping side. I think, like I said, a few high-profile mistakes have kind of overshadowed some good performances. I think he improved for Everton as the season went on. I think it's kind of the lesser of three sort of evils. It's not the most ideal pick for England. It's certainly one of our weakest positions, but still, I think Pickford is probably the man out of those three.
And just continuing your discussion point there of Trippier, maybe a little bit of Henderson in there as well, and Sterling to a certain degree as well, from the fact that Man City, he hasn't had the best season there. Do you think Southgate sometimes is prone to making the mistake of old England managers of having favourites and just sticking with them, or is he a little bit more adept than maybe others on this issue?
Yeah, it's difficult because obviously, as fans, we don't get to see what goes on in and around St George's Park and around the training camps, around the dressing room, what characters he thinks he needs in the starting 11. What players might have little injuries before games we don't know about, what specific weaknesses in the opponents he's trying to kind of attack. So yeah, there's always will be criticism, and obviously he does have certain favourites and has had over the years. But to be honest, I think we kind of, if he really was like that, and if he was really picking players based off form from years past, and Lingard, for example, would make the squad right now, which I think, he's had a good few months, but there's no way he deserves to be in this over the likes of even Bellingham, for example, who over 12 months has shown real consistency and quality, and is clearly a player coming through. It's going to be huge for England in the future. So, players like Trippier are his favourites, but again, these are good players. It's not like he's picking players from League Two that are going to go and play in the England squad, like Mike Bassett, for example. He's picking very top players that have won La Ligas. Trippier was in La Liga team of the season at right back. I think that he gets some criticism, Southgate, But overall, I trust his judgment over any kind of Tom, Dick, and Harry on the radio or TV.
So let's move it on to my favourite bit because of the alliteration with your name. We call it Triple T, Talking Tactics with Tristan. Now on screen, you do this really kindly for us. You provide little visual representations. So let's talk about building from the back here. I think this is maybe one of the strengths for England. But how do England like to play defensively?
So off the ball, I think in the 3-4-3, and again if it is 3-4-3, that will become a 5-4-1 when we're kind of in our low block, so closer towards our own goal, which can be a problem in that 3-4-3 system, because obviously where you have those two wing backs coming back, and then you've got 5 players there, and then you've got maybe 3 in the front line who aren't so defensive minded. And the 2 wingers need to go and protect those spaces either side of the centre midfielders, then it can often become quite negative, whereas you can't put the high pressure on the ball because you've got so many players further back, so then you have to drop back. So that could potentially be a problem, but then Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea, for example, was played that 3-4-3 system and then just being very, very aggressive with the press. So and which is something Southgate might potentially do and has the players to do. Walker and James can definitely do that. Maguire probably can do that role as well, with Stones kind of sweeping up in behind the 2 of them. So get nice and tight to the opposition. Wingers, if they're playing a 4-3-3, high press, have the front 3 showing outside for the wing backs to go and press the ball. And win it in the wide areas. So yeah, I think that could be kind of the system off the ball, bit of a high press, and then when we lose it or if we're winning, then drop back into like a 5-4-1 sort of low block.
Yeah, PPDA data kind of shows that England does like a high press and winning the ball in the final third of their opponents as well. They don't want them to play because it is that possession-based stuff. Moving it on to the attack, though, again, another great video provided by you. How's the team going to try and get the ball into the back of the net?
So, as we alluded to before, Southgate will play out from the back wherever possible. It doesn't always mean for England playing the shortest pass, but it means being in this expansive shape when the ball's with the goalkeeper with Pickford, so he can kind of isolate and pick out 1v1s wherever they may be on the pitch, and we can overload certain areas. So yeah, he'll play with the back 3, obviously back on the first line of build up, we'll say, next to the goalkeeper, and then the 2 sort of centre midfield players maybe rotating into the space, one going a bit higher, one going a bit deeper. We've even seen variations from a few 3-4-3 systems like Chelsea's, for example, of almost like a midfield 3 even, with one of the 2 central midfield players dropping in closer to the 3 centre backs, one of them sort of pushing off to the side, and then you can have Foden or Grealish, a player like that, who can theoretically play as a number 10. They actually move from their like right or left winger role into the midfield 3. So then you have almost like a 3-3, and then wing backs and a striker and the other winger as well. So potentially we can see that kind of shape and build up, which will pose different teams different problems. I think we'll see the wing backs nice and high if it's 3-4-3, looking to pin back the opposition fullbacks and give us spaces to play out from the back and allow our midfielders to get the ball, maybe even in the kind of wide areas to the side of the 3 centre backs. So yeah, I think that's how we'll build up. We'll try and build through the pitch, play through the lines, hopefully break lines early, then play in behind to players like Sterling, Rashford with the pace to run behind. Harry Kane will be important in build up, dropping in as he does for Spurs, receiving it in between the lines that he got some criticism for England in the last international break. I think it was against Albania. I think unfair criticism, because I think one of the goals he actually dropped in, received it, played out wide, and then we went and scored. So I think that will be the way we'll kind of build playing in the final third. We can really rely on the creativity that we have in the team. If Southgate picks our most kind of creative players that can play inside the block, Foden, Grealish, Sancho, Mount, players that we haven't really had before, that can do that real creative midfield role. England's so blessed to have those players now. So we can do that, but then we can also mix it up and rely on the wing backs getting forward and putting balls in the box. As I said, we've got one of the best number 9s in the world in there, and we've got good players around like Mount who can, run off the second ball and find those pockets and get into the box as well. So yeah, I think he's got a real kind of varied options in terms of his attacking play. All the players on the pitch are footballers. There's no one on there really that's purely there just to defend or purely there just to cover ground, even though players can do that more than others. So yeah, I think that's the kind of tactical approach that Southgate will use to help us get some goals, a few more goals from open play, hopefully this time as well.
Now, this time you've mentioned there the kind of laughing there in the last moment about more goals from open play, because obviously at the last World Cup, England scored 12, but 9 of them came from set pieces. You talked about Trippier's kind of brilliance on those dead ball situations, but yeah, are you positive that we will see more open play goals? I mean, because the squad is very different, do you think that maybe Southgate almost relied on set pieces because the squad in 2018 wasn't as good as it is now?
Yeah, I think. Well, the first thing about teams scoring off set pieces, unless you win a free kick for the opposition player from being offside, and then you just launch it 90 yards and then win a flick on and score. But I mean, unless that happens, you've actually kind of earned the set piece, haven't you? Because you've got up the pitch, you've got into the final third, and I know that set pieces have a lower maybe expected goals from open play. So teams that rely a lot on set pieces are kind of frowned upon, and rightly so statistically. But it still meant our attacking play was good, and we put opponents under pressure. At Sweden game, for example, we were in their box or in their final third a lot, and then we won the corner that I think, or the free kick that Ali scored from. So yeah, I think we will score more from open play because of the creativity we had. You're completely right that it was maybe more of a robust England squad last time. We're talking about players like Young on wing back, but now we have Chilwell who can attack and get forward a lot better. Players like Lingard in midfield, Loftus-Cheek who came on against Tunisia in the first game, real kind of box-to-box players. And now, yeah, we've got the creativity that we can kind of maybe play through the lines a bit better, and also we've had longer to work on attacking patterns and things like that. So yeah, I think hopefully we'll see more than a few goals from open play this season, but a few from set pieces won't go amiss in the big games as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes people are too remiss to write off what I think was a marginal gain that Southgate actually worked upon. He worked on penalties, obviously from his own psychological trauma of missing one, but there is that real kind of situation that you want to practice penalties, and I loved reading and hearing the stories about the situations that you worked upon. They'd do a full training session and then they'd take penalties, or they'd work on set pieces just to simulate every kind of situation it could be in. But one kind of thing that you said there, that the team, and I'm mentioning as well, is the team work on a lot of things, but there has been criticism that there's no settled starting 11. Do you think that, you look at great teams throughout history where you could name basically 9, 10, sometimes even all 11 of those starters? Is that a problem for England, or does that kind of diversity in who starts actually give England almost a weird foible of positivity?
Yeah, I think it's always difficult. It's always difficult with England, especially because we've got like Kane, for example, who's a world-class player without a doubt. And then around him, we've got lots of players that are at a kind of a similar level. And it's just a high level now, but it's a similar level. So that's obviously where the controversy comes in with the squad and the starting 11. So obviously Southgate has to, as we go international break to international break, pick the best players at the time, especially now, for example, we didn't have friendlies in February or March, I think it was. They were qualifiers for the World Cup. So he has to pick his best team at the time, the players that are fit. Back in the autumn, there was all these COVID bits and pieces, teams going on quarantine, loads of injuries because of the extended season or the change in season because of the COVID pandemic. So, yeah, it kind of has been a bit difficult for him. I'm sure he would have liked to have more of a settled starting 11. But I think it was kind of similar going into the last World Cup. I don't think it was so clear what the starting 11 would be. But when we did get into the tournament, it was very, very consistent. It was a 3-5-2 or 3-5-1-1 with Sterling just behind Kane. Pretty much the same three centre backs in all the games, apart from the Belgian ones, the last one in the group that we had to lose. And actually remind me about that, because we can talk. That can be another talking point for the next question. And the other Belgium game, which is in the third place playoff, that's maybe one of the worst games of football I've ever seen in my life. So those two games, apart from those two games, it's very, very similar kind of team. The Croatia semi-final, I think he played Rose instead of Young at left wing back, which was one little change. But yeah, it was pretty consistent. And I think we'll see something similar. Like he'll get his head around the team in the next two friendlies against Austria and Romania, I believe. And then we're into the tournament, and I think he'll have a decent idea about who's playing. And you're right, it's important to have a settled squad, but I think we will see kind of similar names playing throughout the tournament.
Before we get on to the Belgium discussion there and talking about the worst game of football that you've ever seen, one final question on the tactics of the team. Do you think that England in their squad, in their players, almost have a protection in many cases for almost every situation? Because you look at the squad and the way that they like to play possession, they like to play on the front foot. But then quite often in those situations, you think of Spain maybe in history, they had quite a small squad, and so a ball over the top, and that kind of countered a lot of their work. But England are fantastic in aerial duels. They have such a high win percentage, and on the ground as well, defensive battles, England win in a very high percentage. They're one of the best in world football at it. So in many instances, do you think that England almost have the perfect mix of players to do well in this tournament?
Yeah, I think it's a good squad. It's not the best squad in the tournament, and I don't want to be too carried away as an England fan, as we always do. I think France have a better squad. They've got more strength and depth in key positions, centre back and centre midfield, and it's what we've spoken about for England, that we don't have those key players in probably the two most important areas, especially if we're talking about tournament football. You know, just getting over the line and winning by any means possible. Yeah, those are really two key important spaces that England are lacking in, and the French have in abundance. Portugal as well. For me, they have probably the second best squad in the tournament, over Spain, over Italy, over Germany. Really like the look of their forward players. Obviously, they've got Cristiano Ronaldo, but now Ronaldo's not even the talisman, so he'll have to play maybe a slightly different role for them. They've got João Felix, Bernardo Silva, etc., top players in most positions. Ruben Dias at the back. So yeah, I think the England squad is pretty balanced overall, and we've got top players like Maguire if he's fit, and we've got Henderson in midfield. That's a very strong spine if he's fit, and if he can find a bit of form in these two friendlies, if he's even involved. So yeah, we've got a good amount of balance, and it's a good squad. I'd say maybe the third best squad behind Portugal and France, or maybe even equal with Portugal right now. So yeah, that's how I kind of see the squad playing out.
So let's move it on then to the point that you wanted to raise, the two Belgium games, the two faces of England in many instances. Yeah, was there a good knowledge there displayed maybe by Southgate in the first instance of the dark arts of football, you know, knowing when to not win? And then you can talk about, if you want to, the tragic event of England or football's worst ever game.
So yeah, there's obviously some different schools of thought on it, but I mean, in my opinion, I'm sure England fans have to agree, that Belgium game where, you know, he brought Danny Welbeck on, and if Danny Welbeck plays a game of football, you know, you're probably not trying to win that game. So if he plays and we lost, I don't think he set us up to lose, but we made a lot of changes and we did lose. And then England, you know, had to play then Colombia. Okay, that was a tough game. Sweden, Croatia, who had played 2 extra times before that, or 3 extra times even. So had loads of running in their legs. And then obviously we would have been in the final if we beat Croatia. So, I mean, really it was the best decision. And then this time out, the reason I brought it up, and now I haven't completely got my head around this, so I could be talking complete rubbish. But I've seen the tournament tree. But now there's 24 teams. It's a bit more complicated. So first places normally play second places. Simple 16 teams go down to 8, going down to 4, down to 2, and then you get the winner. In this one, I'm almost certain that if we win our group, we have to play second out of the Portugal, Germany, France group. I think that's the case. So I'm almost certain that's the case. And then if we come second in the group, we also play a second place team. Again, I think, which sounds weird, but there's loads of third place teams going through because of the amount of teams, and then it's decided pre-tournament on pots and who's in what group and that kind of stuff as well. So I think we play second out of, there's like a Spain, Sweden, Slovakia group, something like that. So yes, potentially we could get to the situation where Gareth Southgate has to lose against Scotland in the interest of the country, which would be very, very interesting. Yeah, it'd be completely fascinating, to be honest, to see if it does play out like that. So I've spoken to a couple of people about this, and they just say, oh, it's a tournament, it's football, win all your games, try and win all your games. But to be honest, as an England fan, if you're saying, would you rather play Sweden again or Slovakia in the second game, or the first knockout game, versus second place out of Portugal, Germany, or France, then obviously there's only kind of one winner there. So yeah, that's my kind of take on things, and it's something that potentially I think we could be hearing a lot more about in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm just, having a look at the tournament tree myself, and I think you're dead right there that the second place and everything could work out. So interestingly, that could be a Scotland win, which they might hold in history forever. But then if England win the tournament, then it could be like a mutual negotiation between the two nations there. So let's draw it towards the end then. We're talking tactics there of Southgate, but we also talk about the golden generation and maybe the squandered opportunities of Rooney, Gerrard, Lampard, etc. But would you say that this one is actually the better generation because it's better managed and better balanced?
Yeah, it's a big shout, definitely. But I think in terms of the squad, and maybe we're talking about it in hindsight, because we say Lampard and Gerrard, who obviously went on to do things after 06 that are very, very impressive. And Ashley Cole, etc. Similar. So maybe talking about it in hindsight, but I do think that squad, if you look at it on paper, or certainly the starting 11, it was Paul Robinson in goal, and then Gary Neville at right back, one of the best Premier League right backs of all time. Ferdinand and Terry at centre back, two of the best centre backs in the world at that time, and that's your key position really in a tournament, centre back. Every kind of good tournament winning team, domestically or internationally, has had very, very good centre backs. And left back, Ashley Cole, one of the best left backs of all time, full stop. And in midfield, Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes, who obviously all didn't fit in together because Ericsson insisted on playing the 4-4-2, which is why, and you're right, this could be the better generation, because we've got a better coach now. We've got a more modern coach for the time in Gareth Southgate, and probably the other teams as well in the tournament, and maybe even next year in the World Cup as well, aren't as strong as in 06. A fantastic France team with Zidane, Italy team, Brazil team with Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, and Lucio had a great World Cup at centre back. So we'll see. We'll see, to be honest. But I think I think this could be maybe in 3 or 4 years' time. Yeah, that kind of level. 100%.
So would you say that Southgate is the most tactically adept manager that England have ever had?
Well, we had Sam Allardyce.
100% win rate as well.
100% win rate, of course. Yes, I think thinking back over the last few managers, Southgate, Allardyce, McLaren, Roy Hodgson. Yeah, I think for right now, he's very tactically adept. I think if you go back to Glenn Hoddle, I think for the time, Hoddle obviously left because of the big controversy, but he was a very, very good coach with very good technical knowledge for his time. Obviously, if he was England manager now, it wouldn't work at all. And obviously, Capello was an absolute football genius back in the 90s. One of maybe the greatest football coaches of all time potentially. But obviously, you know, got the job 15 years after his kind of prime with AC Milan, and obviously didn't speak English, etc., etc. And there's all those big problems, and was so rigid in his system. So you had to pay Heskey and all this kind of thing. So yeah, it's the most optimistic I think England fans can be going into a tournament since probably Euro '96, in terms of the whole setup around the team.
You've mentioned Euro '96. Song at the time was "Football's Coming Home." Is it going to be this year for England? I mean, realistically, what is the chance? How far do you think England are going to go in the tournament?
It's so difficult to say because, like I said, we've got that. It's a tournament, and we've got that next the first knockout game that I said that could be against a top side, and then you just never know. What I'll say is I'd have England as probably second or third favourites, to be honest. I'd have England over Germany and Spain right now, based on the squad depth and quality. And also the experience. Like, we've been with Southgate for longer than Spain have been with Enrique, for example. So I think the timing is very, very good right now. I'd have Portugal up there, potentially level with England, and I'd have France as big favourites, to be quite honest. And then Belgium in there as well. But I think in the big moments, and when you look outside of their starting 11, when you look at their squad depth, Belgium haven't really got the quality of the other big nations. So yeah, I'd say England can definitely have the quality to make it to the final and win it, but it depends who we play along the way. And I think a France or a Portugal will be very, very tough to beat.
Would you say then that a semi-final would be a good tournament and anything below that is a failure?
Again, it depends. You know, if, for example, if you come up with France in the first knockout game and you go out, it is what it is. You've lost to the team that will probably go and win the tournament. So yeah, but you could frame it like that. As Southgate said, semi-final is a failure if he doesn't make it. Personally, I think the final should be the expectation at least, and then whatever happens in those 90 minutes, you know, so be it. But yeah, I think England certainly have the quality to go all the way, and should be second or third favourites to do so.
Well, I would say that you are one of our favourite guests that we have on, Tristan. It's always a pleasure to talk to you about England. And as I said, you will be back through this summer, all going into next season as well. And we'll be following your journey because you might be making a European journey yourself with your next job. But for now, I just have to say thank you. I have to remind people to follow your Twitter at Tristan T Coach. I have to remind people to subscribe to the channel, make sure to like, share the videos, and get involved in the comments below. Do you think England are going to win the tournament, or have we talk a lot of cobblers in the video today? But yes, thank you for your time today, Tristan.
Thank you so much, Jason. Cheers, mate. Bye bye.